Always been interested in ships in the sea. And a long time ago, I read a book by Farley Mowat called Gray Seas Under. It was the story about Foundation Franklin, a deep sea ocean salvage tug back at the turn of the century. Good stuff. And they would go out off the coast of Nova Scotia, or Cape Race, Newfoundland, rather. They go out in the Atlantic, especially when there's bad weather. And they'd have the radio on waiting for a distress call from a ship. And the way they made their money is if at any time the captain wanted them to throw them a line and put them under tow, there was money to be made. It got cutthroat. There were other salvage tugs out there and they were fighting for the business. But at some point, the salvage tug captain would have to make a decision. You got a storm and it's rocking, and you got a ship that's taking on water. At some point, the captain of the salvage tug has to say, I gotta cut the line. There were pictures and videos streamed while the SS United States was towed from Philadelphia down to Mobile, Alabama. It was quite the scene. The captain was good enough to know that many of us ship aficionados wanted to see this, so he took video and pictures. Beautiful. The Atlantic Ocean, the sky, the clouds. And even though the liner is streaked with rust and a state of decay, it still looked grand on the high seas. Not under her power. Not under her power at all. And you get some 10, 15, 20-foot waves and swells, and the wind is pushing from the east, or actually blowing westward. The tug has to be all the way out here, and the liner's all the way here, and he's got the line literally almost vertical, or not vertical, that's not right, but literally at a sharp angle. And the tug's diesels are churning. The propellers are trying to chew into the water, pulling a ship almost 1,000 feet long that's not under her power. It is quite the job. There's only so much we as people can do. I continue to be fascinated with the Titanic. I can't help it. The Titanic is just incredible. A one-of-a-kind ocean liner, unlike anything else. That's an aft view, a stern view of the Titanic. Decks crowded with people on her maiden voyage. That scene is eerily haunting. Broad daylight, leaving England. That scene would be played out 4 days later with that many people, if not more, crowded on that very spot. It's 2026, and this is what she looks like today. To the right is the stern. The forces upon the stern of that ship are beyond believable. They had what was called spalling, when the hull plating with all of its gridiron of steel peeled back like an orange, splayed out, folded over on itself. It's hard to believe that such things could happen. This is the bow section. The bow has still maintained her majesty to some degree. You can see the crumple in the bow as she landed on the ocean floor like a stub foot. She planed down and went, that breaking all down the side. And the bow is like a stub foot. She could never be raised. She could never be raised. To try to pull that up, things would be breaking and snapping, and the rust has gotten into her real good. And yet, even in spite of all that, She's done remarkably well. That's the stern. You can see the decks. It looks like the side of a high-rise, a low-rise opened up. Looks like the Alfred Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma after Timothy McVeigh blew the whole front off. But if you look to the left, you see a section of hull plating, probably 100 feet long, ribboned like a sardine can. And you look at all that. Look at the shell plating. That's an inch thick, folded over, bent. And it's obvious what was happening there. That thing had air trapped in it. Implosions took place, causing inward suction blowing back out. And as she hit the ocean floor, she hit hard. The front of the stern section shows the engine still mounted to the keel plating, the double-hulled bottom, standing there as if though still trying to power her to her destination that she never reached. There are people in our lives. You see them. You know who they are. And their life looks like this. Some of them don't see it. And we try to help them. And it's a sad thing when you realize there's a certain point that people get in their lives that you just sadly have to stand off at a distance and watch them sink and go down. For a Christian, what are we supposed to do? You see people just spiraling down into their addictions, their sin, their drugs, alcohol, whatever. What do you do? Well, one thing I know about a shipwreck is you don't want to get too close. You don't want to get tangled up in it. When people got in the lifeboats, they said, get away from her. She's going to cause a suction. That's a big object. It's just going to pull things down with it. There are people in your life, they'll pull you down. Get away from their suction. I find it amazing how much about the ocean and ships can be modern analogies to our life. You got people in your life that are just like that. We're talking 300 feet of ship standing like a swan dive. I get so tired of the clowns arguing about the brittleness of Titanic steel. They're fools. They're pulling rusty ship steel and testing it in a lab. Oh, it was inferior. Oh, okay. Yeah, credible stuff here. The Olympic was made from the same steel. They were built side by side. The Olympic got done first and sailed about a year. It takes 3 to 4 years to build one of those back in the day. A lot of work. And the Titanic did not have inferior steel. Nobody this day knows exactly what the iceberg did. When I was a kid, they said it created a 300-foot gash in the side. We know that's a lie. The thing would have sank much faster than 2 hours, 40 minutes. I think what happened is the hull plating is riveted. Okay, it overlaps. They got inch-thick steel overlapping, like buttons. And those riveters, if you want to watch some old footage of a riveter, your life expectancy on a job, your hearing, those were horrible jobs. You think your work is tough today? Hold one of those. Hot iron rivets, and boy, there was no OSHA. There was no workman's comp. You got your butt to work. You earned for tiny pay. You went back to barracks in Ireland, row housing. The men lived in row housing to do hard, back-breaking work. I was given a raise and an eval at my job and a bonus. The raise was, I'm thankful for it, but it was insulting. I've been pushing. My supervisor said I was very angry when I saw that. And he went and talked to management and said, you're not going to find a worker like Mike. He said, well, we reserve the better pay for managers. And I said, you know what? I'm so tired of our caste system. If I get more volume out, that means more money for the company. And you're not going to find everyday people like that. My supervisor says, well, I want you to be a manager because that's the only way you're going to get your pay bumped up significantly. I don't want to be a manager. But if that's what it takes to get a $5 an hour increase, then dang it, I guess I better put on the boots. I think it's bull. Our society's always been a tier system. Blue-collar workers, people who work physically, tearing their bodies up, it ain't worth more money. Why is that? You got these soft moms and these soft dads that have 100K, 200K a year jobs. They don't want to remodel their house to hire the guys to come in. You know what those guys get paid? Peanuts. It's like when they hire the Mexicans to landscape their property, pay them peanuts. Hard work. Why is hard work not rewarded? But a pencil pusher is. The guys that built the steel ivory towers that the lawyers and the bankers sit in, there was no danger to them. Laying steel, laying iron 100 floors above the street, you should be getting good money for that. Concrete finishers, drywall installers, any of that. 15 an hour, come on. That's stupid. And I see that. The people that built the Titanic, we don't know any of their names. 3,500 people. 3,500 people were employed to build that ship. They did a damn good job. The Titanic was engineered to be like this, not like this. The fact that she was like this for all that time proved the integrity of her steel. But as the bow loaded down with water, as the stern still buoyant with air, the ship was 46,328 gross tons, 882.5 feet long, 92.5 feet wide, from keel to top of mast, 175 feet, 104 feet from keel to navigating bridge. 29 boilers, 156 furnaces, 2,207 people on board, 1,503 died. All of that could have been avoided if they had sufficient lifeboats. 4 smokestacks, one of them a dummy funnel for ventilation purposes only. Many of the ships did that to give the impression of them being bigger. Back then, people were easily fooled by a sleight of hand. But you look at the Titanic today. How is it that the bow and the integrity of the bow is still there if it had inferior? How come the decks haven't gone? Think about it. It rams into the ocean floor somewhere between 25, 30 miles an hour. Can you imagine the force of hitting that? No, the Titanic steel was just fine. You got all these quasi-experts on the Titanic disaster. You got a guy that looks like he works for the White Star Line, some young kid with the oiled hair. He's actually stated things in his channel that are completely false. One of them saying that there were many people that saw the ship break in half. No, there weren't. Read Walter Lord, the Knights. Remember, read any of the books and the recounts. Jack Hayes was one person. He drew a diagram of what he said he saw. It showed the stern like this with the back end down and the bow like this broken in two. And we all know that didn't happen. We all know the stern didn't go down butt first. The stern, the Titanic, read the account. Read the accounts. At 2:18 p.m. or a.m., the Titanic was like this. They said suddenly the stern had settled. And the lights went out. Well, there you go. Why did it suddenly settle? The bow had broken off under the water. Nobody saw that. All that pressure was removed. People are dumb. People want to call themselves experts. I read the historical accounts. I read it before this boy was even born, who's playing a Mr. White Star crew member. I'm sorry, I'm tired of the lies. The internet is full of them. Please be careful. I studied the Titanic before it was even in vogue with today's. When I was in school, nobody cared about this. I was in middle school when I got interested in it. Nobody cared. Now everybody's all into it. It's because of that movie. That movie had nothing to do with reality. Zero. A little dig about Jack and Kate Winslet. Totally false. You're not going to have steerage running up to first class. That was not allowed. A third class ruffian Irish boy is not going to be eating in the first class lounge. That's not going to happen. The family would have never had him up there. Him teaching Kate how to spit. That's modern feminist society thrown into 1912. No, 1912 was a caste system. 1912 was, have you seen the well-to-do up and down Park Avenue with their noses in the air? High hats and arrow collars. And lots of dollars, spending every dime for a wonderful time. And those guys chose to go down with the ship. You see Bill Gates, George Soros, Zuckerberg, Bezos, all the Google crew. You think they would go down with the ship? Oh, no. Do you know who I am? I get a lifeboat. The rich aristocrats were very chivalrous. But the Titanic was a caste system. The third class wasn't even allowed out. They kept them kennelized. They had iron gates. They finally had to bust through them. And all of a sudden, all these people poured from the bowels of the ship. They even said it. Like, where'd all these people come from? They couldn't get out. The White Star crew wouldn't open the gates. Funny, none of them were tried in court for that. All this whining and protesting today. Nobody protested for the way the third class people were treated. The third class rosters on the death toll are just disgusting. Women and children dead. Crazy. But I love the Titanic. It was a well-built, beautiful ship. They learned some things from the disaster. They did the double hull all the way up to the waterline. The Titanic had a double bottom. You know, if it scraped something and ripped it, you still had more skin. But the Olympic came back and they extended it up past the waterline. That way, in the event something creases the hull, the water will go into the inner part and stop till they can get it repaired. I learned some fascinating things about ocean liners. The Queen Elizabeth years ago was cruising up the Chesapeake. That's the East Coast. And it had sailed it many times. Same course. One day she scraped something. And they're like, what in the world? What happened? And they said the captain didn't do wrong. He had followed the same course, but his speed was higher. Now, you wouldn't believe this. The more you increase speed on a liner, something actually happens called squat. That, when a car is going fast, it kind of lifts up. When an ocean liner increases speed, it squats down. And it squatted down just enough to hit a shoal, and they found the paint on the rock. They found the place. Didn't sink the ship. The Titanic is fascinating because with it, we have modern day 2026 analogies. Look around you. Look at the people in our society. They look like this. The orchestra's playing, the lights are burning, and they don't see any problem. We do. I watched the Titanic movie for one reason: my love of the ship. I had no interest in Kate Winslet. I had no interest in Jack. The whole story was what made the movie sell. That's it. The movie grossed $200 million. It cost the Titanic. The Titanic cost in 1912 was $10 million to build it. A cruise ship today costs a fortune. Hundreds of millions. The Titanic movie grossed more than the ship was ever worth. They came out with a movie based on a Clive Cussler book called Raise the Titanic. A box office failure. In 1980, nobody cared. The kids weren't watching it. Teenagers, I was the only one that got into it because I like special effects. The Titanic had not been found yet. And they wrote in my yearbook, I wish I'd have kept it. May you find and raise the Titanic. They called me Mr. Titanic in Mammoth High School. Miss Keller, the yearbook lady, did a special on me, Titanic historian. Me and my ugly green poofy jacket on, holding one of my books that showed a picture that you will not get in a book by a guy that had private photographs that he had purchased, views of the liner that nobody has seen. It's called Beau Voyage by John Malcolm Brennan, a coffee table book. I have it in Washington. I need to get my things before it's too late. Costs so much for shipping anymore. I love the ocean liner era. I love a big ship. They couldn't move fast like a sports car. I hate these scat packs. So retarded. Noisy. Little boys and their baby toys. Give me a liner. Give me reciprocating engines and propellers and a ship the size of the trade tower going through the ocean. The SS United States did roughly 40 land miles an hour. Imagine the trade tower on its side going 40 through the sea. Now that's impressive power. Who cares about your Dodge Ram? Oh my gosh, small little boys and their small little plastic overrated toys. Give me an ocean liner. I would love to walk down in the engine room on a cold Atlantic crossing and feel the warmth and hear the sounds of the heartbeat of a ship. To stand on the bridge and look out over hundreds of feet of bow with anchor chains running through their tracks and capstans and masts and a cargo hold. Wow, now that's awesome. It's sad what happened to the Titanic. It's sad what people are doing to their lives, and you try to talk to them, you try to help them. You can't throw a line to a ship that's in that position. It'll pull you down with it. And the Titanic is still claiming lives. Ocean Gate, A bunch of clowns paid $250,000 for a casket. Pretty stupid. One of the sons did not want to go down there. If you got claustrophobia, the last thing you want to do is get in something that small. And they had a porta potty in there. That had to smell awesome. And you're going to go down, and the guy that was running the whole show was laughing about his Nintendo joystick, PlayStation controller. I'm like, you know what? I remember saying this ain't going to end well. And the Coast Guard picked up a. That's it. It's funny how people think they're all that. Do you know how fast that is? Where's there any sign of the bodies? A lot of oxygen in our body. That oxygen's going to collapse at those depths. There's oxygen in our blood. I have a feeling that their bodies probably just about vaporized. They weren't dead. Titanic people that drowned up here and then just settled to the bottom of the seafloor. If they had a life preserver on, I wonder how long they would have floated before their body just rotted away. Months later, they found a Titanic lifeboat. Did you know that? I believe there were 3 crew members in it. I think it was a collapsible. Dead corpses. They did a burial at sea. The Carpathia actually picked up dead people out of the water, as well as the Titanic survivors, and performed a funeral at sea. 1 minute, you're on the most luxurious ship. Then you're sat in deck chairs on the Carpathia with woolen linens around you, keep warm. And people want to talk to you, and you hear the woman say, "Go away, we've just seen our husbands drown." And today, women are drama queens about everything. Those women were tough back in the day. They sit there and whine and fuss for 30 years. They continued on. Now, the Titanic steel's got more integrity than most of what's built today. You'll never see a liner built like that. Never, ever, 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 ever. That era is over. Why is it I have a fascination with that era and I never got to live in it? I lived at the very close. I was born into the world when 2 mighty steamships came to an end of an illustrious career, the Queen Elizabeth and the Queen Mary. She came into Long Beach in 1967. The Queen Elizabeth steamed on to Hong Kong, where she was going to be converted into a floating university, and somebody went out and sabotaged it and set it on fire. Her remains are underneath Lantau Airport. They put in fill, and they said most of the engine room and the bottom of the ship is underneath all that. Sad end to a lady. Queen Mary lives on, treated like a prostitute, while tourists trample her decks and California sun bleaches out the wood and then they replace it with plywood. Gosh, our generation's so crappy. You can still walk on the Queen Mary and catch a glimpse of yesteryear. But how do you reach people whose lives are like that? Not much you can do. I have a friend. I spoke with her live this morning. I love her. She's beautiful. But she's struggling. And I'm in no way embarrassing. She won't do what she needs to do to get out of the cyclical bondage that she's in. A feeling of helplessness sets in when you watch people do that. What can you do? Nothing. You can care, you can be a friend, you can pray. But people have to The Titanic, if we were to reverse this show, if you had more lifeboats, everybody would have survived. Not one soul would have been lost. Can you imagine the Titanic had Wi-Fi? The first Wi-Fi was called the Marconi Wireless. It's a fascinating device that was state-of-the-art back in the day. And it's fascinating. You're going to see me disappear for a minute. I'm moving to the other part of the house. I have to get ready for another day at the salt mines. And it's fascinating because the Titanic is a story that lives on. The ship is sunk, and yet the story sails on in the hearts of men, women, and children everywhere. It's fascinating stuff. That is one of my favorite pictures or artist renditions of the ship sinking. It's pretty accurate. If it had inferior steel, it would have cracked in half long before it got to that point. We live in a world of so-called know-it-alls. People get a following on the internet, and their head gets bigger than the reality, and they think they know everything. The engineers knew what they were doing when they built her. They did a good job. She was unlike any other. The Olympic was almost identical to the Titanic. Their first class dining room was taken carefully apart and built back into a hotel. I believe it's still standing to this day. All that woodwork, all the ornate paneling, fascinating stuff. They found stuff in a barn in the countryside of England. It was salvaged off the Olympic. Staircase, newels, and railings, and oak, weathered. They don't make stuff like that anymore. The Titanic is a once-in-a-lifetime ship. And you know what's ironic? If she never sank, none of you would even know about her existence. I might not have gotten into ocean liners. Reading A Night to Remember, I was in middle school. I was reading The Amityville Horror, The Towering Inferno, you know, all that. Poseidon Adventure had come out, drama, survival movies, crazy stuff. And it's interesting because I read A Night to Remember, and as I'm reading it, it hit me. This is a ship? Man, it sounds like a floating town. I had no knowledge of the Titanic. I didn't even know it existed until I read the book. It got me hooked. I caught what Robert Ballard described as Titanic fever. And when Robert Ballard found it, he was the man who found it. Nobody's even talking about him. Now you got these little boy experts on YouTube that don't know what they're talking about. They got a whole channel, self-professed know-it-alls. They got a channel, do you know what the room in the back of the stern was? Why don't you tell us, Mr. Know-it-all? It's unbelievable. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of people that know more about the Titanic around my age and older. But here's something to think about. None of those women on that ship or men knew how deep the ocean was. None of them. If you were to take those people as they were walking on the Titanic, and you could go back in time, you could take these color pictures and you could say, hey, you see this? They go, yeah, what is that? That's the back section of the Titanic after this voyage. Would they have believed that? Not in a million years. Those people, one, didn't know the ocean was that deep. Those people back then had a very limited knowledge of the world around them, to a degree. They knew nothing about ships in the sea. They knew ships could sink, but they didn't know, especially women. You get on a ship like that and you got woodwork and columns and stained glass windows and you're in there and it's hard to believe you're out at sea. You were in the Waldorf Astoria at sea. And they made those ships luxurious to attract the women and the people to make profits. Look at her now. 2026, 114 years later. Look at the steel. Look at that. It still hasn't collapsed. Inferior? Give me a break. People are dumb. They're ignorant. A little common thinking in the person's mind today, going just a little bit deeper, you see that people are fools. You see that people show their ignorance by their statements. You cannot have a ship. I've been in ghost towns in Nevada. Not salt water, but Nevada dry air, and I've seen mining derricks from the turn of the century or back in the day. Rust. Sections rotted away with steel that thick. That's under salt water. The decks are still standing. The support, the Turkish baths, shows the tile still intact. Your bathroom tile wouldn't last 5 years under salt water. People need to quit talking out of their butts. And that goes for Mr. Titanic channel too. They don't know what they're talking about. I read many accounts. There were not hundreds of people that said she broke in half. But the narration of what they saw tells you something did occur. When the stern suddenly eased back, there you go. You have to understand that most people in the lifeboats couldn't take their eyes. There were some they turned away. The ship was making noises. Once she slipped beneath the waves, the agony of screams filled the Atlantic air. Melancholy, depressing reality. Your nice, warm, wonderful environment is gone. I have a sadness over an inanimate object. The Titanic takes on a life because of how beautiful she was. It's sad what happened to the people. It's sad what happened to the ship. Her engines are still standing there at attention, as if though they're saying, I didn't complete my voyage. They'll never start again. You can't even get the pieces or the parts for that stuff. You could never restore that. Never, 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 never. She's too far gone. The story of the Titanic is fascinating because it teaches us a lot about the overconfidence of men. It's 2026 and we've learned absolutely nothing except that man's ego doesn't quit. Does not quit at all. Why is that? Why is it that the arrogance of man never fails? People were boastful about that big ship. Now they're boastful about their little, stupid, plastic-lined, heated seat. Come. People think because they got this big income, they got this nice house, their head gets all puffed up. Did we not learn? Did we not learn? That's what happens to your ego right there. In time, God will touch the balloon of your ego and it will go like a balloon deflated. Anything that sets itself up against the Most High, there you go. It's a sad story. Man thinks he's all out on a stick. Now we got a generation of women and men. They haven't worked a hard day in their life. TikTok queens, TikTok wannabes, social media, people who think they're going to make the big money. A rapping, shirtless, hairy underarms, sweaty, B.O. guy sitting in his room, talking foul, thinking he's going to be the next big one to make money. And you want to yell, get a job! Oh, here's a can of deodorant too. We don't learn from history. We don't learn from history. And people go down, they want to see the wreck, they want to get down, they want to have a touchstone with it. I'm happy for the work Robert Ballard did. I'm happy that he brought images into our living room to tell the final chapter. I feel sadness. The beautiful woodwork, the first class dining room, the grand staircase, the beautiful clock, honor and glory, crowning time, the Café Parisien, the reading and writing room, the smoking room, the beautiful, beautiful attention and detail. And the same story plays out in America. People go to their jobs to work, to make a difference, and the management doesn't care or value. Here's a pizza party for you. Nobody knows the name of one single craftsman that worked on that. Those steel workers. Look at the ship. 112 years at the bottom of the Atlantic, and their work still says, "We are the champions of steel." Look at that. Take a building in New York that's old and put it at the bottom of the Atlantic. 112 years, and tell me how well the steel does. Clowns on the internet. I'm going to say it again. How come they haven't collapsed? There's rust all over that ship. There's still weight to that steel. How is it still holding up? There's pressure. The weight of the ocean is on it. Stupid people say stupid things, and so many Americans, they don't have peripheral brain. And what I mean by that is they hear something and they go, "Oh, yes, this is the truth." Use your peripheral brain cells. Look at these pictures. Now that is a painting of all the photos they took, every square inch of the debris field, and they put it all together. The decks, they're open. You can see them. You could still walk on those floors, barring all the rust icicles and stuff hanging down. No, there's nothing wrong with the steel. There never was. That's not why the ship sank. It has nothing to do with it. It has to do with a very simple engineering fact. It has to do with physics. It has to do that if you'd have taken the bow of that ship and came straight at the iceberg, you would have smashed in maybe the first two compartments, like the Stockholm. 1956, the Stockholm rammed deep into the side of the Andrea Doria. She backed out. She sailed on to New York City. She was headed to Sweden. She had to go back because it only damaged a couple of watertight compartments. The doors were shut, keeping the water out of the rest. The Titanic, if she'd have hit the iceberg head on, would have been able to make it to New York. They would have had to do major repairs to the bow, and she would have sailed on into history. But she turned, agonizingly slow. You cannot imagine the forces when you steer a ship that big. You turn that wheel, It takes time. There's a telegraph. You pull the telegraph, hard apart, and it goes ding, ding, ding down in the engine room. And somebody's like, hard apart. They're turning valves, which changes the direction of steam. And the steam comes in different tubes, and that big giant rudder goes. And the time it takes, we learn this in driving, stopping distance. There's the recognizing, reaction, and braking distance. That all plays a part. Same with the steering. By the time you've steered this thing, it's agonizingly slow. And they're going, come on, come on, come on, come on. Oh, we missed it. Worst decision they ever made. Titanic could have had a couple watertight compartments compromised and been just fine, but they exposed 5 of them. And because the bulkheads didn't come up to the top, the what you call the bow deck, the water just did this. And the weight starts pulling her down, and it starts spilling from one to the other. Doesn't matter that you have watertight doors. So, ship construction today is extremely different. Everything's welded. I'd be curious to know what a modern day cruise ship, if it gashed the iceberg and it went down like the Titanic, I wonder how that would hold up. It'd be very interesting to do a study on that one. Are they built any better? Is my question. You cannot take most modern cruise ships and put them on the Atlantic. The Titanic was designed. People don't realize this. The shape of the bow, the shape of the stern, the keel, they were designed to handle 45-foot seas. Ship, 882.5 feet. You can't do that with these cruise ships. They're throwing people. They're rocking, and they're too big. They're too top-heavy. They're too bulky. You take some of these, NCL ships and giant behemoths. They're made for the Caribbean. They don't get stuff like that. You get them out on the Atlantic in a full-blown hurricane, it's over. That's why if they have to take these ships across the ocean, they have to watch the weather. They have to do things. They're not made for transatlantic cruising. The Normandy had a wave deflector up on the bow deck, shaped like this, so when the waves came up, it diverted it away instead of smashing up into the bridge windows. People don't realize it. A normal crossing on the Atlantic, most of the time, could be dangerous to your health. Even the rolling Queen Mary. I mean, she's moving. That thing had a 116-foot beam. She was 1,000 feet long. Her gross tonnage was massive. It was, the Queen Elizabeth and the Queen Mary were the biggest ships of that time ever built as far as tonnage and dimensions. And yet they sailed back and forth in World War II, hauling our troops. Phenomenal stuff. But when you deal with people that are so far gone, you pray for them. And you be a light to them, but sometimes we as Christians have to be careful. You can't rescue mission people. You can't bring them into your home. You can't bring them too close because you might get hurt. You might get pulled down. You might get damaged. A tugboat only throws a line to another ship when the captain asks for help. And then the captain tug has to make an assessment. Is this endangering to my vessel and my crew? And if it isn't, we have to use wisdom. Some people are unreachable. Some people have gone too far. I believe in a young woman. She still is at the point where she could stop the water from entering her engine room. But there comes a point when the water gets too much and then she's going down. There are people just like that. Learn the lesson from the Titanic. God can and will sink anything that we erect against him. He will sink and ruin anything we've built, done, set up in our heart. Even the biggest megalomaniac, George Soros, these clowns that are alive, wreaking havoc and damage, they will be brought low before God Almighty. It says in the Bible, every knee shall bow, every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Everything is going to bow to God. And the Bible talks about there was an earthquake in Revelation so great, one has not been like it on the earth ever. So great was the earthquake that the cities of the nations fell. That big, crazy skyscraper in Dubai, that Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building, the new World Trade Building, they're going to come tumbling down just like the walls of Jericho. What are we building our life for? God's going to deal with the people that withhold the pay. He's going to deal with those that got greedy and lined their wallets. Again, we know not one name of one person. None of the fabricators, none of the craftsmen, none of the iron workers that built that ship. Not one. Society could care less. So it is with you and me. But God sees. And God doesn't weigh things the way society does. God doesn't look at it. He doesn't look at the celeb and the sports culture and go, oh yeah, you guys cool, man. There's going to be a Christian woman in some dusty outback in Africa with a broad nose, exotic features that nobody even knows. It's going to hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant. I don't think most Americans are going to hear that. I think people from other countries that come to Christ and really get a hold of that, we're going to be singing heroes that we've never heard of, never seen. Everybody's going, who's that? Oh, they didn't make American TV, did they? They didn't win the Oscars and the Emmys and the Globe and the Dove Awards, did they? God is not going to, this is what people don't understand. The shepherds were visited by the angels to herald the birth of Christ. He didn't show up to the big shots. God knows about the sufferings of the common people, the peasants, the peons, the serfs, the us. So keep doing what you're doing, arrogant, puffed up men and women. Keep doing it. You're heaping to yourselves judgment. This here could have been avoided. That pride of men always causes destruction. I could have lived on the Titanic. I could have lived in a first class cabin. They had a fireplace in their cabins. These things were beautiful ships. I could have lived on a liner like that and been content. Just to walk down the decks, go and stand in the rooms, go look at the beautiful craftsmanship in here. Can you imagine seeing the temple of God? That would have been something. Thank you for listening. You may not be drugs or whatever, but you know what? When we're not in Christ and we're sailing the sea of life, I could have been like the Titanic too. And God saved me. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. Nearer, my God, to thee was sung by many as the deck of the most amazing liner was slipping out beneath their feet on a cold Atlantic night. Because suddenly, how many of them were Christians? I don't know. Were any of them Christians? Were any of them born again and saved? There had to be some. Maybe not. Was one of the life preservers saying, well, God, I guess I'm not going to the new world. This ship is taking me home. Are we ready for that? Nobody wants to die. Nobody. But we all gonna, unless the rapture happens. I hope it does. I hope I can cheat death. I hope I can live and just hear the trumpet sound and yell down to the neighborhood, hey, free house! Leave it to Michael to be sarcastic. God can take our life and make it a thing of beauty. The devil wants that right there. That. That's what he wants to do with you. He wants you to live your life, ignore God, and reject him. He doesn't care how you do it. He just wants you to reject God and reject the truth. He'll even give you the strength to laugh and deride the truth and mock it and make you believe that you know more than everybody else. You do realize that picture. That's truly artistic license. It doesn't look like that down there. That lighting is way off. It looks like this. Actually, let me get a better, let's do this again. This is what it looks like where the Titanic sits. All the time. 24/7. 365 days of the year. That's what you see. And in 1986, for the first time, a light from Alvin shined on the greatest shipwreck ever, gleaming off a cabin window, a porthole. Wow. She sits in the dark right now. Nobody's there. There's crabs, there's fish, and there's rust hanging and streaking from it. Thank you for listening. Learn from the Titanic. Are you sailing? Are you sinking? Have you collided with something? Are you in the lifeboat of Christ? I don't care what form of transportation you go on. Christian McAuliffe went up in the space shuttle. I believe it was also in 1986. I was at work. They had the plant radio on. Paul Harvey. Then we had the interrupting news on the radio that the Challenger, I believe it was, blew up. And I'm doing my job. I had to go up and down the lines and check the things that the ladies were sewing and tell them if it was good or bad for the 2.5 and 5-ton truck top covers. And a lady looked me in the eye and said, how could God allow this to happen? She was the first woman in space. We're ignorant. But I was tender. I said, I don't know. I there's a morbid part of me, not totally, but I'm like, can you imagine you're in your seat? That's it. It's all that quick. So all you women, all you TikTok queens, all you smart aleck youth, and even old people that think you're all that, that's how fast your life can just vaporize. Get some perspective, man. Nobody cares. The only people that care about your money and your fame are shallow, shallow, shallow people. God used disasters to reach me. My study of that disasters actually got me depressed. Just before I got saved, I said, man, these disasters are ugly. There's just death. Everywhere is death. But God used that to drive me to Him. See, it's not just about our little world. We were made for so much more. We were made for a relationship with the Creator. And life's going to disappoint us. Life is not fair, ever. Life is inanimate. We have life, and you can be walking outside of God and you're alive, but you're dead spiritually. And even as a Christian, how many churches are sprung up on the American landscape telling people you can have your best life now and health and wealth and prosperity? Nobody wants to hear a sermon at church. Nobody feels comfortable hearing a sermon at church that, no, if you desire to live in Christ, if you belong to Christ, you're going to have suffering. It's not if, it's just when. I read the devotion about a woman yesterday. One son died of cancer, and then a second one got it. And she, people are looking at her like, how do you still trust in God through that? People trusted in the Titanic. God Himself couldn't sink this ship. What kind of a God did these people believe in? He said, let there be. None of those people on the deck of that ship realized there was 2.5 miles of ocean underneath them. It's one thing to be up here and hearing beautiful waltzes float through the first class rooms. The engine's driving the ship, steam heat, it's warm, the lights blazing from the portholes. Feels nice in there. You don't want to believe that this can be broken and shattered, laying in the dark. We are very, very, very human and fickle, and we don't realize, we don't think about the reality. Life is not a cruise. I've read other stories about ocean liners that had terrible endings that most of you have never heard of. Ship that sank off the coast of Newfoundland in a winter storm. It's called the Winter's Tale. I forgot the name of the ship. It was a small liner. And the weather was so bad and so cold and frigid. I read the story of the whalers. That was the impetus for Moby Dick, the story of the Essex, just this last winter. Men eating the dead in their lifeboat to survive. Men rowing across open ocean. Landing on an island and using birds to cook for food, and then going, okay, there's nothing here, no place to make shelter. And the men that survived that, some of them went right back to New England and got back on a whaling ship after that. You got to be kidding me. Listen, if I survive something like that, my career at sea is over. There's a man in 1912, he worked in the engine room of the Titanic. He survived. In 1914, he survived the sinking of the Empress of Ireland on the St. Lawrence River after being rammed by a Norwegian cargo ship, freighter, whatever. In 1915, the same man survived the sinking of the Lusitania. Now, if that man did not get saved and come to Jesus, he truly was a clown. The Lusitania sank in 18 minutes. The Titanic in 2 hours and 40 minutes, and I forgot what the total time was for the Empress. It was pretty fast. She rolled over on its side in a dense fog. People were sound asleep. And when a ship lurches over and the lights go out, you're screwed. And then it's dark, and you can't launch lifeboats on one side, and it's pandemonium and chaos. All of those ships had over 1,000 people dead. Crazy. But to survive 3? Man, I hope I see that man in heaven somewhere, because if he didn't get saved, you are a clown. That better cause you to say, wow, God, you have a purpose for me. Wow. I love ships in the sea. I don't like our cheap age. I hate the name of a car called Kia. A Kia Sophia and a Prius. I'm in the wrong era. I love a Duesenberg. They had 12-cylinder Duesenbergs. A Duesenberg could go 85 miles an hour in second gear in 1929 or 1930. And these people buy these loud little scat packs. You know what scat is? It's another name for animal crap. The boys and kids today are not interested in reality. They're interested in just that crap you get out of a gumball machine in the little plastic bubble. In the 50s, boys were interested in trains. The boys would run down in New York City to the docks and watch an ocean liner come in. Now, God knows what they're doing. I'm sorry, I was born in the wrong era, and yet I was born for a reason into this era. Is God using me? I pray He is. People tell me He is, but who's going to tell me if He is? A lot of us think we're doing all this and that. What for? To what end? I love ships so much. One day I just, without even realizing it, went, Wonder how long it'll be before she finally falls in on herself. Those big bow anchors, I want one so bad. That propeller at the stern, I want one so bad. I wish I had a different place and I could get one of those anchors and mount it right in the front yard for everybody to drive by and see the sheer size and weight of it. Don't have to worry about anybody stealing that. Some idiot today would probably tag it with graffiti. That's how stupid our society is. Those bow anchors still in place. Held by the chains that run across the deck and back down. And can you believe that? Let's talk about inferior steel. Do you know how heavy those anchors are? The propeller's still gleaming. That propeller could be polished up and reset and reused. Those anchors could too. They'd have to be pretty well sandblasted. Jesus is my anchor. He still stands the test of time. And may God propel me and my craft across the seas of this world. Till next time, be safe. Christian, sail on. There's storms, but there's times when the sea is beautiful. There's times when God shines on you out there in your life and you feel his presence.